Welcome to another awesome video.
Today we've got this Pioneer PL-88FS drawer loading turntable.
A lot of difficult letters to say.
Yes. This model has already been featured in a YouTube video by one of my favorite YouTube personalities. You know who that is?
Papa J? No, wait, Techmoan.
Yes, Techmoan had a video about this, but in our video, we're going to take a radically different approach to repairs. We're going to try laying some hands on it. That's right, there's some turntable faith healing coming right up.
Ooh.
But first, it goes without saying that they don't make turntables like this anymore. Pioneer offered a handful of these models from about 1983 to 1985.
That's only like 3 years.
Yeah, I guess the models don't last that long. It's got a sturdy metal platter, a quartz lock direct drive motor, and it's really cool to see your records sliding in and out. Normally, you just flap them down. Here it is right next to my Technics SLJ2 linear tracking turntable for size comparison. Despite its high-tech look, the Pioneer is actually not a linear tracker. It's just got a standard Tonearm. Look at how long it takes the drawer to open and load a record. Other than the cool factor, why would anyone want this thing? Well, one answer is space. One thing you can't do with a regular turntable is stack other components on top of the turntable because you couldn't get it open. But with this Pioneer drawer loading model, you could easily stack other things on top of it, and it's actually pretty sturdy and heavy.
That's pretty interesting.
Another cool thing about this is, you know what else was happening in 1983? Guess.
Tapes?
No, CD players.
Oh.
And so this thing, you can program the tracks like a CD player, and it'll play them back. It does that through this unique thing called a double eye sensor, and all that is like an LED that shines down onto the record. And if you ever looked at a record, between the tracks looks a little different. So the double eye sensor senses where the tracks are, and so then it's got this little computer that lets you pick out the tracks.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Why'd you say that?
Because it's a computer.
Oh, okay.
Computers could take over.
Every time I press the button, the little Tonearm would just slide back to the beginning and back. It's like it didn't detect the record. It just went back and forth. And the motor never started turning. So I was guessing.
The arm works.
Yeah, that's all it did. And this thing, it has got a lot of electronics inside, and even after taking off the cover, you really can't get to much of it. Somebody gave me this turntable. I wasn't sure of the history. There's some scratches on the bottom, but everything looked like it was in pretty good shape.
Like a rat was in there and just trying to get out. Ah!
I found this thing in the service manual called Dummy Play Mode, where you disconnect this connector and jumper a couple of pins, and then it'll act like the drawer is closed, so you can kind of see what's happening. And after I did that, you could tell it just swings out, it doesn't find anything, and then swings back.
What do you mean by dummy play mode? Car crash test dummies?
No, not car crash dummy. It's just like it's a thing you set it up in service mode. Like you can operate it with the drawer open if you press the manual button, but this makes it think the drawer is closed, so you can try out the automatic features. But it just kind of slides out and doesn't detect the record and goes back. So the double eye sensor was the main culprit here, because it was obvious it wasn't detecting anything. And all the double eye sensor is, there's a picture I took with my phone. It's an LED that shines down, reflects off the record, and reflects back onto two photo transistors. And so then I had an inspiration. Do not try this at home, but here's what I did to get the thing working. And the problem is it's not sensing the tracks on the record. It's just going to go right back. But if I manipulate this board here and add some resistance from my hand or something as it's trying to scan tracks, I cause it to think there's a track there. So let's hit start, and let's start just kind of touching around where the sensor is, all that kind of stuff. Eventually I'll hit something. Notice this is very dangerous over here with the high voltage, but look. Aha.
Heal this man!
So it's going to start playing. Do not try this at home. This area would be very dangerous to touch. This area is like low voltage, but... Next I did another experiment which made me think it was the LED that was bad. I took my phone and turned on the flashlight and just sort of laid it on the record and guided the Tonearm over the two bright points of light from the phone's flashlight, and that also seemed to activate the record player. So, which made me think, okay, something in that sensor is off. The light is not shining down into the sensor, because obviously I didn't touch any wires that time and it still started. So I felt like the photo transistors were responding to a very bright light. My next experiment was to chase the Tonearm with an LED, which was hooked up to the Phono ground and also the sensor board, which I had temporarily mounted on the outside of the Tonearm. So when I connected the wire The LED lit up. There's a yellow LED, but if you looked closely, it looked like the infrared LED was also reflecting back into the video camera recording, which made me question the ground wire next. So I think I might actually be getting somewhere now. I've got this grounded to the case, and I make it all the way back up to the cable and to the ground wire. Here, it's going out to the Tonearm, but on the sensor itself, no signal. At this point, I got kind of excited because I thought maybe this whole problem was just a short in one of the bundle of wires going out to the Tonearm, which would be challenging to fix, but not technically complicated. So I set out to prove that. So I ran a ground wire up to this thing, and that seems to make it work a lot better. It'll actually stop and start on its own. Can even hit the skip button and skip ahead of track. I've just got to figure out how to get the ground wire fixed, and I think I'll be in good shape. But unfortunately, it was not that easy. One problem is disassembly was going to be a challenge because I hadn't had to take the thing apart, and from looking at other videos, such as Techmoan's video, it was a nightmare to just get down to it. And then when I hooked it up to the stereo just to see how it sounded, I realized that there was some other short because only one channel worked. So very disappointing performance. Even if I managed to snake a new wire up the Tonearm, with that, take it apart and run it up the little sort of net container of all those wires, I still would have a dead channel to deal with, which, you know, there's a proprietary cartridge and all these other things. So at this point I decided let's wrap up part one of this video. We'll come back to it later. The double eye sensor just may be more trouble than it's worth. This thing is complicated. It's kind of like Doc Brown's ice machine from Back to the Future 3. Cool idea for the time, good technology, but is it really worth it? I mean, changing tracks on a turntable is not that big a deal. But anyway, we're going to wrap up part one. In the future, we may be back with a part two.
Well, we'll see you next time for another awesome video, and Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.